Hello, and welcome to the Warrior Arts Renaissance Show, where you give us hard questions and we give you solid answers. I'm your host, Dr. Philip Payne. My co-hosts today are Shoushi Pridgen and Instructor Jacob Payne.
It's a little bit different when it is coming directly at you and you only have you to worry about. But as you said, when you got your wife and kids that cannot defend themselves, and especially against a larger crowd like that, like you may be really good and could take out the first 5 or 6 with a gun, but you're not going to be able to stop when you've got an entire horde of individuals who the only thing in their mind is mass destruction and death. They're set into an emotional roller coaster that is not gonna back off. So there again, like I said, if I felt that the situation was, if such a crowd like that was rioting was within 2 blocks of my household, I would already be making the physical movements towards getting my family out of there to a safer area without having to actually confront them.
I agree. I think avoiding that confrontation with the larger group is definitely best. Tell you what, why don't we end with that topic right now and kind of segue, because what you said was is a good lead in to doing that whole bug out versus bug in plan.
Right, and if you remember, you had a class on this down at the Golden Willow Academy, probably 2-3 years ago. Their survivalist class.
Yeah, I think it's been a little longer than that, but it's
Okay.
it's
But it's
been a while. Yeah, yeah. We spent I'd say probably at least a third, maybe half of the day on that one. I forget what we even called it, but it basically was a big seminar. Um, and we had things like we did improvised tools, improvised weapons, navigational skills. It was pretty good. I thought it was a pretty interesting day, pretty good day. So with that said, that Jacob, I think you have a lot more to offer this discussion now than what you had a year ago, having been through your Marine Corps boot camp and MCT and what have you. So before we jump into what you know, what Shashi was touching on the last segment at the end of it about, how do you know when to bug out? Um, why don't we jump into Jacob? Because some of our listeners will be familiar with what I've taught in the past. What do you look at differently since you've gone through your Marine Corps training as far as being able to bug out?
Well, I would say don't expect to get lost in, be ready to get lost and learn how not to freak out when done so. Because I've trained for a long time with you on land navigation over the years, just going out and camping and then having to find our way back and stuff like that. But then when I was taken with boot camp, we had to do it in a really small area, and we had to do it in the dark and things like that. But it was a small enough area that we wouldn't get lost, and stuff like that. So, but then I got to MCT, and the navigation course was miles and miles in every direction, and the coordinates that I had to go find were all over the place. in those miles. And I think the biggest thing I learned that day was that it's important to keep your head on straight, even if you start getting lost. To take the time and reevaluate your surroundings, even if they all look the same. Take a deep breath, get refocused, and if you have training, you need to rely on it, trust it, but always have more than one way to navigate. If you're really good with a compass and a map, that's good, but maps can be destroyed and compasses do break. I've had my compass break in the middle of the night during training, and I had to find my way back without it. And thankfully, I was able to, because you actually have taught me how to navigate without a compass. So that saved me in my training. What else? When preparing to get out of Dodge, you obviously need to have an escape route. You need to know the land as well as possible. But what they reinforced in that part of training was to have certain resources already packed. Of course, you need enough food for a few days just in case you do get lost for a couple days. More than one way to navigate, obviously, like I said. You need to have at least one blade. They made us all purchase a blade when we got to our second training after boot camp, even if we brought one already, because they wanted to make sure everyone had one, because that's how important it is.
I think it's also, I mean, that's important. Everything you said there is, I 100% agree with. Something else we got to think about though is that, not everybody who bugs out in that situation is necessarily going to be bugging out into the woods.
True.
I mean, that's what I would do. I mean, I would get to a woods and hopefully, a body of water that's moving and get gone. You know what I'm saying? That's my go-to, so to speak. But some people wouldn't know how to survive that way. And for some people, bugging out would be take what you absolutely need and find a safer place in the city. Find a safe route to a loved one's house. You know what I'm saying? That's maybe outside the riot zone or what have you. So I don't feel like we can look at this as strictly as, okay, there's a riot coming close, so we're going to bug out into the wilderness survival mode just because that's what you and I are used to thinking about. That's not. I mean, you got people. Let's think about Louisville starting to have some serious trouble. It sounds like there are people in Louisville who the only time they've seen a wild animal is in a zoo. Okay, so but they might be maybe the riot's happening in one part of the town, and like 5 or 6 blocks outside of that area is grandma's house. You know what I'm saying? Or someplace that they would be safe. So what do we think about there?
Well, it's good you bring that up. Thank you, because I now live in a desert, so all the training I've had in the woods kind of goes out the window, most of it, because it's different. It's different out here. You have to worry about different things. But in the city, I think the biggest thing to take away from like the training within the woods or desert, the biggest thing to take away from there to put it into practice in the city is to circumnavigate. I think that's the right word. Circumnavigate your obstacles, and to know how to get back on track. The biggest thing, one of the biggest things they drilled into our heads during training was to be able to get around massive bodies of water or a giant mountain, but then to make our way back to the path that we were on, just on the other side of that body of water or that massive mountain. People that live in the cities, like Louisville, or even bigger cities like New York City, they need to be able to circumnavigate a massive mob and be able to find their way back to their original route.
A good point. And I would think, and this is just me, I would think, having lived both in the city and in the country, and having worked in even larger cities than what I lived in, I would think that in general, once you know the lay of the city, that's actually going to be easier because you might circle around 5 or 6 blocks, but you can check your street name or your street number and find out if you're back on course, you know. Whereas, you can't, if you don't exactly know the lay of the land and you're out in the woods or in some other remote setting like in the desert, if somebody walked out of say Las Vegas into the desert, what I'm saying, to escape a mob, it might be a lot harder for them if they don't have the experience to find the right landmarks or what have you to get, whatever they need to do to get back on course to get to someplace safe. So that's one reason why I think everybody who has a bug out bag should have both a map of the surrounding area that they're trying to bug out of, but they should have a city map, and they should also have a not necessarily a topographical map, but a map of the surrounding countryside as well. And they need to practice it. You can't be practicing your bug out route every day, or your neighbors are going to know where the heck you're going. But even if it's like every month or two, you and your family take a drive and be like, okay, we would follow this road until we got here, and then we'd follow this creek, and then show them where the creek comes out on the other side of whatever, you know what I'm saying, and it comes out to the next road, and okay, from here we're going to take this route. So the whole family's familiar with it. I think in a time like this, we need to know what our plan is going to be.
You just reminded me of something, actually. So during MCT, we trained, well, it stands for Marine Combat Training, so obviously we trained combatos. But while we were in the swamps, sleeping out in the field and everything, we did basically we had like a mock war. And like we were split up, our company was split up into 2 teams, Alpha and Bravo, and basically we had to go make base camp and make fortify it and everything with the resources we had out like right in front of us, and then we had to spend that weekend out there trying to find the other team and have skirmishes with them and basically, yeah, it was just like we were practicing warfare, right? One of the biggest things my instructors enforced was once you are done with a mission, because some of these missions we weren't led by our NCOs, we had to lead them by ourselves, and we were tested. Some of that was just part of a test, and we were instructed to, when we came back to our base camp, we would have to. We were not allowed to use the paths made from like hikers and stuff like that. We had to make our own way back and make it as confusing to the enemy as possible. So once a person makes a base camp while bugging out, one, you need to defend it, but also if you're going out to get resources, because eventually, no matter how prepared you are, eventually you're going to have to leave and get resources to resupply. You need to be careful about not leading others back to your base camp.
That's a very good point. Shoushi, you've been pretty quiet on this one. What do you have to give us?